So yes, it's actually taken me 14 years to make this burger. I basically am sharing this video because anybody that comes down here for a burger always raves about my burgers. I think they're coming along, but I'm my own worst critic. Those of you that are coming back here just want the recipe in a neat, tidy form. What can I do for you? How's that? Now, if you haven't seen all the ingredients and why I put these ingredients in there before, I urge you to watch the video just so you can make your own educated opinion before you just judge me on a burger you haven't tasted. This started out as a journey which was simple, just to make a better burger because my burgers were junk. So how did we get from there to 14 years? Well, every year I started making my own burgers. I started picking up ingredients from scratch, fresh ingredients, and then just incorporating more ingredients to see where this thing is at. Now, for those of you that are burger purists and think that your burgers only need meat, you can go ahead and back out. But I urge you to give these things a try, and you're free to tell me in the comments below if you think your burger is better or if this one is better. What'll really drive you nuts is, yes, I freeze these things as well, and I honestly can't tell the difference from fresh or if they're frozen, as long as they're cooked in the way I'll show you later on in the video. So this is where I'm probably going to agree with those burger purists out there. The meat is everything. I started with chuck roast. I actually grind this myself. I'll leave a link to the top if you're curious about how I do that. And I just trim off the hard chunks of fat, but for the most part, I leave everything in there. I'll grind it through twice with a coarse blade. The second time that I grind it through, I incorporate the ingredients. And the third time is the fine plate, and that'll have all the ingredients again. And I find that mixes stuff up really well. Saves you the time of having to mix this stuff all by hand. The meat that I use for making burgers is ground chuck. I found this stuff really, really good. If you can get a slab from the butcher, that's the way to go. But the fat content is important. Fat is flavor. Fat, salt, and heat. Those are the three things that are making this burger what it is. Okay, so we've got the meat all sorted out. So the ingredients I'm going to list here are going to be some different ratios, but I'll try to get them all so that you guys can break it down however you want to. Typically, when I'm making these burgers, I'm making about 10 to 15 pounds of meat at a time. I'll roughly try to break that down into 1 and 2 pound increments for you. Anyway, so first ingredient we're going to need is onions, and either white or yellow onions is the way to go. My preference is the yellow onion. I think that that's the better flavor. Take 1 onion for every 2 pounds of meat, and for every onion that you're going to use 2 cloves of garlic. Try to pick out large cloves, and once you have these chopped up, throw them into a food processor and mince the absolute berries out of these things until it's like a fine puree. Chuck that in with the meat. Next, you're going to want eggs. I take a large egg for about every 2 pounds of meat. Sometimes I guess you can go a little bit more, maybe 1.5 pounds for every egg that you put in there. 2 is a good number if that does work out for you. The egg's going to help bind that burger together and help it keep together long enough for some of that fat to render on the barbecue, and that's going to hold your whole burger together. Plus, I mean, eggs are protein, and who doesn't love protein? All right, so I already know we put onions and we put garlic in there, but guess what we're going to add? We're going to add onion powder and garlic powder. Put about 1/2 teaspoon of this per pound and about 1/4 teaspoon of your garlic powder per pound. I think it makes a difference. You could argue with me, maybe it doesn't. I put it in there. I'm just sharing with you what I've done and what's worked out well. You know, I should mention it as well. The first 12 years of doing this whole burger thing were very successful. Every single year I made an improvement. The burgers were better every single year. The last 2 years I have failed. I've had to revert back to my previous recipe that didn't have some of the additions. So anyway. All right, next up we got salt, and I recommend a good quality salt. This is my personal preference. Use about 1/2 teaspoon to 1 teaspoon per pound of meat. We're going to add other ingredients later on that's going to supplement this, and different flavors are just going to help make that burger more complex and add some flavor. And with salt, we always add pepper. So I'm just using ground black pepper, nothing fancy here. and about a quarter teaspoon per pound of meat. I think works pretty good. We're also going to add a different kind of salt for more flavor. A quarter teaspoon or so per pound of seasoning salt, whatever preference that you have in the house. Chuck that in with your meat as well. While we're putting these ingredients in, I should mention too, just combine all the ingredients, kind of make a bowl with your meat or put it in a bowl, chuck it all in there. Once you've got it all in there, mix it loosely by hand just till you kind of have everything kind of in with the meat. Then run it through your coarse grind plate again on your grinder. If you're doing your own meat, that is. If not, mix it till you want to make your patties, whatever consistency you want your meat. But you don't have to mix these things in independently one by one. Now this puppy is seriously some magic. Worcestershire sauce. You want about a tablespoon of this per pound of meat. There's something to be said for the magic that this does, but it makes a lot of the flavors just pop. So definitely want this. Don't leave it out. Remember, different kind of salts give different kind of flavor, and soy sauce is more or less exactly that. Just another different kind of salt. Go with something like, I would say maybe a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons per pound. It doesn't take a whole lot, and it does add another dynamic to that burger. Oh, and now for the ingredient that's going to piss a lot of people off. I love it. Stovetop stuffing. Before you go and judge me, hear me out. You don't have to use stovetop stuffing. The more important part of why we're putting this in there is the bread. If you just have scrap ends of bread in your freezer, it'll be just as fine as this. This is not there for flavor. This is there for the bread. We want that bread to be in the meat. And while that meat is cooking, we want that bread to soak up all that fatty goodness, because fat is flavor, and we want to keep that flavor in the meat. That being said, also when you're cooking, I see people always squishing burgers. Don't! That's your flavor that you're losing. You're losing the juices. You want to keep that in your burgers. Chuck it on the grill. I flip my burgers once. I add sauce. I don't touch them again until they're done. They come off the grill, and I install them into my face. Okay, now we've got our mandatory ingredients out of the way, so on to some of the optional stuff that you can put in there. I've seen this quite a few times in burgers from the grocery store, so I tried to incorporate it myself, and it worked out quite well. Behind me, you'll see Sriracha peppers, which are very much tasting like jalapenos to me, and maybe it's a gimmick, and maybe they are. Whatever. If you take your hot peppers and you can clip them off, you can grind them in, chuck them in. Probably about 1 pepper for every 2 pounds of meat if you're doing this. Optionally, if you don't like hot food but love the taste of sweet bell peppers, you can add bell peppers as well. Bell peppers, probably 1 per every 3 pounds. You don't want to go too nuts with that, but the flavor is quite nice in there, and I do enjoy the bell pepper variant that I make sometimes as well. Optional ingredient number 2. Whoa, we all know what this puppy is. If you're going to use bacon, or if you want to add bacon, you can feel free to do so. Just don't go too much. 1 package or 1 pound of bacon is good for about 4 pounds of burger. And does that mean you can't put on the bacon after the fact? No, you can definitely add bacon, but the time that we're going to cook these things is going to be enough time for that fat to render out into the burger, get absorbed by that bread that we put in there earlier on, and it's going to add another dynamic. I really like it. I do it both ways, and I like both. There is a subtle change in the burger, but it is a good addition. Okay, the next optional ingredient, you can kind of see what it is already. It is, in fact, cheddar cheese. Now, you don't want to go too much of this. We're going to put cheese on that burger on later anyway, and the reason why I'm showing you the back of the package, not the front, is use high-quality cheddar. The one I'm showing you, I wouldn't put in these burgers if my life depended on it. If you do have a really good high-quality, rich aged cheddar, it doesn't take much. I first shred it up and just take kind of a handful per about every 4 pounds. Don't put too much in there. You just want that subtle fat cheese flavor to kind of render through the meat. That's it. Okay, so for as long as I can remember, people rave about always fresh, never frozen. You'll hear it on ad slogans and whatever. I honestly cannot tell the difference. But that being said, I freeze my burgers after they've been formed. Then I will vacuum seal them as you've seen, and they stay vacuum packed in there. Okay, so if we're going to do the frozen thing though, we have to be a little bit more careful on how we cook these things to make sure that we're cooking them right. My preference in temperature is 350 degrees. I'll put the burger on there, leave it untouched for 12 minutes. Don't go peeking, don't nothing. Fire them all on there, close it up. 12 minutes later, come back. Flip them if you're a barbecue sauce person and loves barbecue sauce, and I do. Not gonna lie, I really like barbecue sauce. You can go ahead. This is my personal favorite for these burgers, is the Sweet Baby Ray's. I'll put some of that on there, then I'll close that lid back up. For the thickness of burger that I've got here, they will go on for between 10 and 12 minutes, depending on kind of where they are on the grill. It does change slightly where the placement is, how long it takes to cook. And then they're done. I'll take them off. I'll add my cheese onto my bun, put whatever I want on it. When we shape these burgers up, we always go for about 5 ounces or so. And honestly, we're not measuring them out. We want them roughly, and the thickness really doesn't show up well with all the packaging and stuff on there. But about that thick, and they cook out really well. If you want more meat, feel free to cook too, and make yourself a double burger. Plus, it lets you put another layer of cheese in between and another layer of bacon in between. Okay, now I know some of you out there are real barbecue sauceaholics, and you might be thinking, can I throw barbecue sauce in there? Well, yes. It's an optional ingredient, but if you really can't get enough barbecue sauce on your burgers, about a quarter cup per, that's probably about every 3 or 4 pounds, or an eighth cup if you're doing just a 2-pound package from the store. You can put that in the burgers, and it does turn out it doesn't wreck anything. Okay, there's one more ingredient that we do need to talk about, because I almost ended up throwing out a batch of meat because I put this in there. That puppy is liquid smoke. There is something with liquid smoke and some of the other stuff that's going on inside these burgers. It does not get along. It's bad. Don't do it. Burgers are still edible, but you'll regret it. The burgers are way better if you use only the ingredients I listed in here. Add the optional stuff if you want to. Try the base as it is though before you do anything else, do any modifications, and let me know what you think. I'm pretty happy with it.